So I'd like to welcome you to the OTF Connects Present session, Digital Storytelling with iPads and iPhones with Jim Carlton and Mally Bickley. And I'm going to let Jim introduce himself. But before that happens, I'd just like to welcome people from all over Ontario. It's great to see that the reach of OTF Connects is reaching from both east and west sides of the province. We're really glad that you're here with us and hope that you have an opportunity to learn. So, Jim, are you ready to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name's Jim Carlton, and I live in Moonstone, Ontario, which is just a little bit north of Barrie. And so I teach with Simcoe County District School Board, and this year I'm teaching kindergarten and grade 1. But pretty much taught all the grades, been an ICT consultant, worked a lot with Mally, and you can see we've put Iron Canada and some of the other OTF sessions we do focus on that, which is Iron is a network that connects students and teachers around the world in a variety of different projects. And through that, we got heavily involved with digital storytelling through being involved in those projects.
Yeah, and I'm Mally Bickley, and I'm actually just a recently retired teacher and still able to keep in touch with students and teachers through both Iron and another organization called Taking It Global, where I do some professional development using video conferencing equipment to connect classes from all over Canada, which is really exciting. And one thing, as Jim said, that we really had an opportunity to do is get involved with using digital storytelling as a means for students to express their learning, which has been really rewarding for us. And what we're going to do tonight is give you sort of an overview of some of the apps that are available for iPads and iPhones. Not saying that you need to have a class set of iPhones and iPads. When we started using this technology with our students, we did only have one iPad, or the kids were sharing our iPhone. So we know that there are creative ways to approaching using digital storytelling with your students, and we're just going to give you a little overview on what digital storytelling looks like in the class and some of the apps that you can access. So I'm actually going to hand it over to Jim for a couple of seconds while I do some just a little bit of administration work on this side.
Okay, thanks, Mally. So just quickly looking at what we hope to accomplish tonight. So like Mally said, we're going to spend most of the time, when you look at the outline, investigating some of the apps. We're not really going to be looking at programs that are available. We might allude to some of the programs that you might have on your computers, but mostly focusing on iPad apps, iPhone apps tonight. Hopefully you'll be able to see how digital storytelling can be integrated into any part of your curriculum, K to 12, and we'll be just touching on Creative Commons and copyright because it's such a big part of what you'll be doing when you're creating digital stories. We want to make sure that we're all on the same page there. We'll be actually participating a little bit in the critical response method because the whole digital storytelling process is, we're going to outline what we believe is a good process. Just like writing, there's a process to writing, we believe that there's a process to digital storytelling, and a key component of it is the critical response portion. We'll look at some student work, be involved in some feedback around that, and finally we'll be looking at, so now your students have created some work, what are they going to do with it? So if they're just creating it for you, that's one thing, but if they're creating their work to share with the world and getting it out beyond your classroom walls, that just takes it to another whole level. So we're just going to start off with just trying to get an idea of where people are at. So if you just, again, want to use the tools that we were just using over to the left, you can just put in a check mark at which division you're teaching, and that'll just kind of give us a little bit of help as we're going through what to focus on. Like Mally was saying, we're both elementary teachers ourselves, so a lot of the examples that we have are elementary, but I think they easily translate over. You'll be able to see, okay, so if that's what they can do in an elementary classroom, we can do the exact same thing in a more sophisticated way in a secondary classroom. So it looks like we have a lot of elementary, a little bit of secondary, and we got another fellow kindergarten teacher. And I'm assuming then the other we've got a few in the other ones. If you want to just put those into the text box or into the chat box, what you're doing, whether you're a consultant or whatever, that might help out too. But it looks like we have a pretty good spread. Teacher librarians, yeah, this is perfect for that kind of thing. Okay, so we'll just move ahead. So just before we move on, like we were saying, we believe it can be integrated into any part of your program. We also believe that it fits in perfectly with Michael Fullen's whole new pedagogies for deep learning, that when it's done properly, on the left-hand side are Michael Fullen's 6 C's. We think that all of those C's have a chance to be really well developed through digital storytelling, along with, you can think of any number of other C's that might go along with it. So to us, the co-learning part of it is a huge part of really not just digital storytelling, but integrating technology at all and anywhere in your curriculum. There's just so much nowadays that it's impossible to keep on top of it all. It's no longer possible for you to learn how to do something and then teach that to your students in a sort of traditional top-down format. So for example, maybe 10 or 15 years ago, if you were going to be doing anything with digital storytelling, you might be taking all of your kids down to a computer lab, and then everybody's going to be working on the same program, whether it's Premiere Elements or Movie Maker or iMovie, whatever the program is. Everybody's working on the same program at the same time. You as the teacher, you're teaching them step by step how to go through the process, and it's sort of away we go. Whereas now I think it's much more of a co-learning environment where tonight we'll look at some of the apps that are available, but I think you'll find my kids are primarily kindergarten with a few grade 1 kids, and they have a repertoire of digital storytelling apps that they can use on their own now. And at times now they'll even just select whichever app that they believe is best going to help them to tell their story, and away they go. And they help each other. Your older students are going to come in with apps and ideas and tools that they'll be able to use that you might not even heard of. It really is a whole different world. So we think that all these C's are going to have a great chance to be sort of developed through digital storytelling and integrating other technologies. So like I was saying, there is sort of a process to the whole digital storytelling process, just like there's a writing process. So in the beginning, obviously, you're going to have a planning stage, and this is when you'll be brainstorming, developing storyboards. Again, it's going to depend on how sophisticated of a story you're telling. Obviously, with my students in kindergarten, we're not creating shot lists and those sorts of things. But if you're in a secondary situation or intermediate, those are sort of things that you might be developing. Then the second phase will be the production phase, where students are collecting media, shooting video, organizing their files, and we'll be talking a little bit about organizing files in a bit, revising their storyboards, those sorts of things. Post-production is what we're going to be mostly focusing on tonight, and that's where you're going to be doing the actual editing. So again, tonight's session will mostly be looking at some different apps that are out there. And then you move on into the critical reflection phase, which really can be attached to any one of these. So when your students have created a plan, maybe you want to have them critically reflect on each other's plans before they go further. Same thing with the production phase, but it's going to be crucial in the post-production phase, once they've completed their rough cut, which would be equivalent to a rough draft in writing, that they learn how to critically reflect on their own media and on the media that others have created. Because often they'll create a story, a digital story, and your students will think that their meaning is clear, but as soon as they go to show it to an audience, the audience is completely missing the message that maybe the artist believed that they were trying to convey. So that's going to be a huge thing that we're going to be looking at later on in a bit more detail. And finally, like we discussed, looking at exhibition and how to distribute the work so that others can share in what they've produced. So what we're going to do is just kind of take each of those phases, go through them, and mostly, again, touching on the post-production phase, because that will let us look at apps in detail. But when you're planning, this is when you're going to have a chance to create storyboards. Again, not so much depending on your age level, like my kindergarten students aren't really creating storyboards and those sorts of things, but I know Mally, when she was teaching grades 3, 4, and on up, her students would create simple little storyboards. And the great thing about that is often when you're thinking, okay, how am I going to fit this into my curriculum? Well, as they're creating their storyboards, they're actually doing a lot of writing. And we've actually had students, as they're working on their projects, they're going, well, this is so much more fun than writing. Meanwhile, they're re-editing a scene, their voiceover and their narration that they're going to be recording in just a few minutes, and they don't even really view it as writing, even though they are. Also, when you're planning, in the planning phase, this is when you're going to want to be organizing your files. Actually, I'm going to come back to that in just a little bit. So let's assume that we've got your students have come up with an idea, they've got it planned out. Now you're going to move on into the production phase. So this is when they're going to be either shooting video themselves, taking pictures themselves, searching on the internet for images, music, using built-in backgrounds, those sorts of things. So this is when you're getting all the pieces to your production and putting them together. And so when you're doing that, a key thing to be thinking about is copyright. So, and over the last few years, that's changed significantly. So, prior to just a few years ago, the rule of thumb really was you didn't use we didn't use any sort of copyrighted music. You didn't use any images that you found on the internet unless it was through the Creative Commons. So the Creative Commons is an area where you can go out and you can find all sorts of where artists have allowed you to use their music and their images and video and those sorts of things. And so that's still going to be hugely important to be looking at, but at the same time, there's now what they call fair dealing, which is going to allow us to, it broadens the amount of media that we have available to us that we're allowed to use. So Mally in the chat box has put in a link to a film festival that's going on in Simcoe County right now. And this is a page that one of our consultants put together on copyright. So if you want to click on that, and we'll give you just a few minutes and you can look through it. What she's done is she's created her own little video that talks about copyright in the Creative Commons. There's the second video that deals with the whole issue of fair dealing. And then you'll see just below that there's a link to Copyright Matters, which really sort of goes through, okay, so all this whole new sort of copyright legislation came about, which deals with more than just education. This little document, Copyright Matters, explains how does the new legislation affect us as teachers and students. And if you're looking through that, there's a couple of really interesting sections, and Jacqueline has highlighted section 13 here, and section 20 is also a good one to look at if you go in there. So section 13, if you have a look at it, is the section where now when you read it, you'll realize, okay, we can actually use copyrighted music and photographs and things in student work under certain conditions, as long as they're sort of creating their own work out of that work, as long as they're remixing it, in other words. So have a look at that for a few minutes. Post any questions that you might have in the chat box, and we'll come back together in just maybe 3 or 4 minutes.
Yeah, and I've just put the timer on for 4 minutes, so while you're, there'll be a ding that'll bring you back. So just simply click on that link and it'll take you to Jacqueline's document. are you going to watch the hockey game?
Okay, so obviously there's no way you would have had a chance to go through all of that right now. So I'm just going to try to give you what I see as the Coles Notes version, knowing that you can always go back there to access there's just a whole bunch of information in there that you can look at. So basically with the whole fair dealing thing now, as educators, we're allowed to use copyrighted material as long as it's used in what they call a sort of fair dealing way. So it has to be work that you've accessed from a site that doesn't have any sort of digital locks or anything like that on it. So you can't try and go around those sorts of things. You have to mention or source the original work, and you have to be creating new content with it. So as long as you do those things, you can use copyrighted material. You could, again, you couldn't use you wouldn't be able. You can only use a certain percentage, and I forget what it is. It'll be in there, but you can use a whole song, but you wouldn't be able to, for example, use the entire album in your student's work. And you're not going to need to anyway. And then you can actually still. At first, I thought, okay, so that's great, and then what can you do with it? Well, then you can still put it on YouTube, share it on Vimeo, and those sorts of things. Now, if you don't feel comfortable with that, you can still always go to Creative Commons, and there's a link in there that will show you how can you find licensed content. You can do, if you're looking for images, for example, you could even just go on Google, search for images, do an advanced search, and then in the advanced search, you'll see there's a usage rights section, and you can just search for images that others have given you. That I forget exactly how they put it, but it's, you know, you're allowed to share and use in your own work and those sorts of things. So really, the doors are open much more than they used to be. You want to make sure that you're sourcing things, and I think that that's something that we've always been doing anyway. If you're not quite comfortable with it, always try and err on the side of caution, I think, and then you shouldn't have any problems.
And the other thing is, I put another couple links in the chat box, which will also be sent to you as resources. The one that I'm just putting in the chat box now, Jacqueline Calder did a whole hour-and-a-half webinar, an OTF Connects webinar like this, just on copyright and Creative Commons. So if you're interested in learning more about that, the link to her resource page and her webinar is there as well.
Okay, so now we're going to get to sort of like the main part of the session tonight, where now, so we've done our planning, we've got our media together for the most part. I mean, it's never a complete linear process. You're always, you know, you've got your media together in the production phase and then you go to do the editing and post-production, you're always going back and forth and changing your plans and getting more media and that sort of thing. But here in the post-production phase, this is where we want to put it all together, and so this is where we're going to start looking at some of the apps that are available that really make it so easy for you to integrate this into, like we said, anywhere from K to 12.
So the first thing that we do want to say to you is that most of the apps, I think with the exception of one, most of the apps that we're going to share with you tonight are free. So it makes it obviously a lot more accessible and affordable for you as a teacher and also for the students. So I know in the students that I'm working with, a lot of them have their own iTunes account and they are able to download their own apps. So free is always great. So we've sourced out those ones. And the other thing is, with each of these apps, for any one that we show you, there are probably 10 more out there that are also free that are in the iTunes store. So if you have some apps that you know of that are in the same sort of category as some of these, please feel free to share them in the chat box, and then I'll add them to the resource page to share that will be sent to you tomorrow. So that's part of the beauty of these sessions, is that we're really depending or building on the wealth of knowledge that we have in this virtual room. So the first one I'm going to show you it's called a time-lapse and stop-motion app. It's called iMotion. It's called iMotion, and as I mentioned, it's free, and it's a great little app for creating something that's called time-lapse. And sometimes you want students to see things changing over time. So an example that we've used this for is when we had chicks hatching in our classrooms, and we know often, teachers in kindergarten, grade 1, grade 2 have incubators of chicks or of eggs, and we can see them hatching, which is really exciting. With this app, you can simply set up your iPad or iPhone close to the incubator and capture the chicks hatching. And what it does is it takes a photograph every 5 seconds, 10 seconds. You can set it for taking a photograph of the incubator once every 15 seconds, whatever you want. So when you open the app, it's going to ask you to create a new movie, and you're going to select time-lapse, and then you're going to select the interval, and it can go anywhere from 1 second or 2 seconds, whatever you want to set it as the interval. And you simply let it run. And a good thing to do is actually to keep, if you're doing something like looking at chicks hatching, keep your phone plugged in. That's just learning from lessons. So I'm going to share with you a video that we created of the chicks after they were hatched, and we're just going to watch it. It's about 30 seconds, and this was created with the iMotion app. Very, very simple to use and really effective and really exciting to share with the parents. So if you're on a mobile device, you can simply click on the link that's in the chat box, or I'm going to put it in the web tour as well, and we can all watch it together. Now, when you're finished watching it, if you just want to click the green check mark and let us know, and hopefully it's going to go. So here we go. We can watch it play. So I'll actually stop that and go back to the whiteboard. But it is a fun and simple app. We've had we've done time lapse of a day in the life of grade 6. So I'll just set my camera up at the iPad up at one point in the classroom and leave it going, and we'll share that on parent-teacher night or something, just to let the parents see sort of a glimpse of how busy a classroom is. Really, really fun. An easy one to do. If you have that sort of a situation that you want to capture, action over time. The other thing, this is another app. It's not really a digital storytelling app, but it is something that kind of goes along with the chicken hatching, or if you have an event going on in your class, is you streaming some of these events. And I know Jim used this when he was hatching chicks last year in his school. We've done it for hatching chicks. We've done it for special events. where you simply set up, it's called a Ustream channel. Again, it's free, and you can start a channel with your classroom and set up your camera as a camera and leave it going overnight. So we left the Ustream channel going on when we knew the chicks were hatching. When it was happening overnight, we had parents watching it over dinner time. We had parents tweeting us that, you know, chicks were hatching. This is really exciting. This is sort of an aside app that you can use that kind of goes along with the iMotion one. Just something that's really fun. It does come in handy when you have events in your classroom and parents can't necessarily attend. I know that we've Ustreamed concerts, we've Ustreamed presentations that were happening in the class, just so parents who were not able to be there with us were able to participate in the activities with their students. And you can choose to record those activities and leave them archived, or you can just leave them playing live and not record it. It's up to you, but that's another free app that's really great to use with your students, just to keep that communication going with the parents as well. Another free app, there are actually quite a few apps in the Adobe Suite. Many of you might have, well, if you're in Ontario, the OSAPAC license enables all schools to have Adobe Premiere and Adobe Photoshop. And those are big programs that we used to, as Jim said, used to have to take the kids down to the computer lab. We'd be you know, working on it all together. They are quite heavy programs and pretty powerful programs, and a little clunky for the students to use. And one of the stumbling blocks that we found is teachers felt that they needed to know the programs before they used them with the students. But Adobe's come out with quite a few apps that are very, very simple to use, and they're all free. There are apps for using photographs, for using pictures and video. There are Photoshop apps. There's a huge variety of apps out there that Adobe has created. So we're going to look at three in specific. One of them is Adobe Voice, the other one is Adobe Slate, and the other one is Premiere Clip. So the first one that we're going to look at is Adobe Voice, and let me just go and get the links. So for Adobe Voice, we'll maybe just show you the video first so that you can get an idea of what it can do. What the students do is they either take photos with their phones or their iPads and collect them on the iPads, or they can import them from other areas. There's an internal library within Adobe Voice that lets you select from their gallery, which there are, I would say, hundreds of thousands of images in there. And the students simply use a very simple storyboard timeline and drag and drop their pictures down onto the timeline. And Jim, you might want to tell them, this is the maple syrup one, what the process was in creating this one while I get it ready.
Sure, and like Mally's saying, it's like dead simple. And if you know, we're going to go through a bunch of apps tonight, but if you were looking for the one app that you wanted to start with tomorrow, I would say that this would be it. It's by far my kid's favorite one. And again, it's, you know, it's something that's so simple that 5-year-olds have no problems with it. Essentially, they'll go in, like Mally said, they're going to choose a layout. They just click on their photos. They can either be searching, there's an internal search of for the gallery of images that they've already have put together. It can be pictures that they've taken themselves that are on the camera roll. Or, and this is something that I think is going to be important, again, from the organizational standpoint, what my students do is we created a class Dropbox account, because the other option in here is to use Dropbox for them to access their images. So how many people, maybe just give us a, using those little icons just down below your name, either a thumbs up or a thumbs down if you've used Dropbox or some sort of cloud storage device before, or tool before. If you haven't, it's not going to make too much sense, but if you have, then you'll get what I'm saying. And if you haven't, as you start working with it, hopefully you'll remember, oh yeah, there was a way that we can actually then, for example, students my parents will email me a bunch of pictures, and then I just save them in, each student has their own Dropbox folder in our class account. So let's say Spencer sent in a bunch today from Monster Jam. I'll save them in his, and make a folder called Monster Jam inside of his Spencer folder. Then when he goes and picks up an iPad and goes to put his images into Adobe Voice, he goes to Dropbox, finds his folder Spencer, finds Monster Jam, and all his pictures are right there. And then he just quickly creates a bunch of slides. He holds down for each slide, just holds down the button, the talk button, and makes a recording. They have a bunch of great built-in music that's like fantastic. Again, it's not like the old days where you go, yeah, there's some built-in music, but it's all garbage. It's fantastic music. And they can just put it all together themselves in no time. Now, this particular video was a little bit more sophisticated because we connected with a class in Taiwan, and our kids were learning how to make maple syrup and that sort of stuff. And so we made maple syrup. Valley was actually going to Taiwan, long story short. She went there, she made pancakes with them. So my kids did the first half of the story, and then the kids in Taiwan just did the second half of the story. And really the way we did that is we all just shared the same account. Like you need to have an Adobe Creative Cloud account for these Adobe apps when you first go to set it up. So we just shared the same account, so you can sync the projects across different devices. And we came up with this. Have you got it there now, Molly?
Yep. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, actually, it is a great video. I'm not sure what happened there. There it is. So let's just put that. I'm sorry about that. We did have a couple of versions. I might have grabbed an earlier one. So
We must make maple syrup at home. We collect sap from maple trees. We boil the sap. Use firewood to boil the sap.
actually, I'm just putting it in the. There it is.
You must make maple syrup at home. We collect sap from maple trees. We boil the sap. Use firewood.
And you know, you can see that it's an effective way for telling a story. Even each class is a standalone, being able to tell the story of maple syrup, or you can see how it could be used for procedural writing, or a narrative, or an explanation. Really powerful that way. But the real beauty of some of these Adobe apps is when you do have, you are able to collaborate with others and share your learning that way. I know that when I was at a conference in the reason that I was in Taiwan was to share Canadian culture and to talk about Canadian schools. And I was able to share this immediately with the teachers at the conference, and it was one of those, really great. It was a great moment. It was simple to do. It took a little bit of planning. So in the post-production, there was, or the pre-production before we started, we worked with the kindergarten kids with how can we tell the story of maple syrup, and I worked online with the kids in Taiwan with the anticipation. So then being able to put that together was really quite awesome. But there's a lot of potential in this app. In just about 2 slides, we're going to let you look at a whole bunch of sample videos so that you can see how Adobe Voice and the other 2 apps can also apply to your particular classroom, because, as we said, we are elementary teachers, so most of our samples are elementary, but we're kind of proud of this little video because it worked out really, really well. And as Jim said, it's really, really simple for the kids to use, and it's also easy as a teacher to set it up because you can instantly upload the videos to your YouTube channel, and if you have Google Apps for Education, you have a YouTube. So we'll just go on to the next.
Okay, so now Adobe Slate essentially does the same thing as Adobe Voice does, but instead of creating a little video, it creates a beautiful web page that especially shows up really, really, really well on mobile devices. And it's the same as Adobe Voice, though, in the sense that really all the different sort of themes and backgrounds are built into it. You select the one that you like. The kids just click on, okay, add text. They type in their text. Add a picture. They choose their picture. And then the program kind of puts it all together for them. And I think Mally's got an example there. So maybe just if you want to put that example up for us, Mally.
Yep.
But the same sort of thing. It's dead simple to use. And the example that we have here is it's a grade 1 student who's done it. But in a few minutes, we're going to you're going to have a little bit of time to look at some other examples that are a little bit more sophisticated, and you can get some ideas of what other people have done for Mother's Day, that sort of thing. So this is Luke's maple syrup story, and I don't know whether it's going to show up. Like, so
is it showing up on your screen? It should.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you just don't get the same sense as you do
right
when you're watching it. But you can see it a little bit. You can see how you get the movement with the text and the initial image. You can create little galleries. They can create slideshows easily. They can add these little quote sections, and then they can add video with them. So that's just the video that we just watched. And again, so simple that 6-year-olds have no trouble putting them together. And then it really does become, as a teacher, you're not so much worried about having to teach the technology part of it as you are just helping your kids to tell better stories, which is what we've always done, I think. And then finally, there's Premier Clip. And so the difference with this one now is this is a little bit more sophisticated. So it's not something, in my class in kindergarten, grade 1, they wouldn't be able to do this independently yet. We created some sort of it's almost like a shared writing sort of thing where we do them together. As a matter of fact, with any of these technologies, when we first do them with the students, it's like anything else. It's like balanced sort of digital literacy where first I'll model it, then we'll do a shared one together, and then they're doing them in their small almost like guided groups, and now they're off doing them independently. But the difference with Premier Clip is now you can actually add in video clips, and you can trim video clips. You can speed up or slow down the video clips. You can turn them into black and white, those sorts of things. You can add still images, texts, and music again, and then it puts it all together in a nice little video. It's iPhone compatible, iPad, again, really pretty easy to use, probably Again, depending on your kids, grade 3, 4 on up, they'd be able to do it independently without any problem. But this is the app that you're going to want to use once you want to actually start adding in video itself instead of just still images and text and that sort of thing. So what we'll do now is you're going to have a chance to go into like Adobe's site where they've got a bunch of examples from Premiere Clip, Adobe Slate, and Adobe Voice, where you can see some examples that might relate more to what your students will be doing. So I think Mally's put that link into the chat box. And how long did you want to take with this, Mally?
Yeah, I think we'll probably do about 3 minutes. So I would suggest maybe taking a look at maybe one of the apps. It'll take you to a site where there'll be lots of examples, and then we're going to come back and do a little bit of sharing what you saw and how it could maybe apply to your program. But again, you're going to have these resources so that you'll be able to do some further explanation when you have a little bit more time. So I'll put 3 minutes on the timer, and so just click on any one of those that you might want to explore a little bit more. And I just noticed I've got 2 in there for Premiere Clip, but it'll take you to the same place, and we'll come back in about 3 minutes. Okay, so we'll bring you back now. If we can use the whiteboard tools, and maybe you could share the app that you can say Clip. I would use this in my grade 9 science class for explaining space. If we can do a little bit of sharing about maybe what you saw and how you think it could apply to your classroom. So if you want to use the text tool, you can just simply click on the, it's the fourth icon down, and you just need to click on that, and you can just type in on the whiteboard. Sarah, that's a really great idea to recount for class trips, and even if you're comfortable taking an iPad with you on a trip and having the students take pictures along the way, and then when they get back to class to create that. And whoever said using Voice with special education students and students who have difficulty writing or typing, I completely agree. It's a great way to be able to show exactly what they've learned. So many students do have difficulty writing, and even typing with SCA equipment is a chore, but if they're able to simply press a button on the screen, it's a great way for them to demonstrate their learning.
Yeah, and I can see all sorts of great ideas in here, including using it Adobe Slate for class newsletters. I'm like, ooh, that's a great idea. I'm gonna borrow that idea. And the whole idea of somebody using it with their special ed students, because it's just like with my students, typing can be difficult, you know, for most of the SKs. So for them to be able to orally tell stories is so important. And the other nice feature with an iPad is that being able to, even when the parts where they want to add in text, they just use the microphone feature in on the iPad in the typewriter display or whatever you call that, the type pad, and they just click on the microphone, speak away, and then it types it out for them, and then they can get in some of the parts where they actually want to add some words, they do it that way. But it's like somebody else said here, really, the possibilities really are endless, like Julie said there. So lots of ideas that you can use for them. It's really one of those things where I think you just have to kind of get your hands on the apps and start playing with them. And like I said, I like them all, depending on what you're doing, but if you're thinking, okay, which one do I want to start with tomorrow? Adobe Voice, you can't go wrong with it. Clips is nice once you want to start adding video, and then Slate is great if you want to create like a web page.
And the other great thing about once you are in the using the Adobe apps, they're developing apps all the time. So they have and it would be more for intermediate senior students. They have an app called Behance, which is like a digital portfolio for media. So the students can keep building their portfolio within that app. But we're not going to get into that now. But just to keep your eye on some of the apps that are available for through Adobe. There's Photoshop, there's Lightroom. It's just becoming more and more. There's more and more variety in there. So thanks for sharing your ideas, and I hope that as Jim said, if you do use one app in the next little bit, that if try Adobe Voice, because it really is very simple. The Adobe Voice one, yeah, I'll go back and get the links for you, Beckett.
Now, is that for Behance that you want? Yeah. So while you're doing that now, if you want to go look for the link for that, I'll just move on to.
Yep, I'll go get Behance.
Okay, so while you do that, then I'll just move ahead to Animoto then. So lots of great ideas on how to use those Adobe apps, and I think that they are, if it's not obvious already, I love them. But Animoto is also a great little tool because you can. What I like about all of these apps, I guess, is you don't have to be, with the more professional video editing tools, you have a lot more flexibility, but you have to be good at using them in order to make something look good. Whereas all of these apps, you don't have as much flexibility, but almost everything that you produce ends up looking professional. And Animoto is another great tool that's going to allow your students to put together, take images, short little video clips, text, music, and combine it all into really cool looking little videos. So maybe Mally will put that up so you can see the difference between what this tool will do, what this app will do compared to the other ones. And we'll talk about it a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm just getting the app. And so, oops.
Okay, and then, well, the other thing with Animoto too is when you first set up your account, you get a free account, and I've just got to find it here. It's a free account, but you can only create like 30-second videos with it. 1 second. But you can apply to be upgraded to an educator account, and then you get more music, more backgrounds. You can create longer videos. You get better resolution. So you get a lot more features, and it's free and it's really quick. I'm just looking quickly maybe while watching the video.
Yeah, I've got it ready. Did you want to tell them what they're using this for? What you're going to be doing with it?
Yeah, so we just went through that part. So if you just want to play it now.
So great ideas for Mother's Day. I hope everyone is able to see that. Yeah, I'm sure that there were, I'm sure the moms loved it.
And sorry, Melly, just if you want to just go for a second, I'm just going to find the link I had it here a second ago and put it in the chat box where people can go to upgrade to an educator account, because it makes a huge difference. 1 sec.
Yeah. And as we said, most of the apps that we're showing you are free, but some of them that are free have limitations. So we can just, I'll just go on to iMovie, and iMovie is really similar to Premiere Clip. It's one that the students might already be familiar with, that again, they can import their own, they can take their own pictures, take their own video, they can add special effects, they can add text to create short videos. It's based on the iMovie from the Mac, from the Apple computers. Very, very simple for the students to use. I'll put the link in here. I'll put the link to it because I'll put some samples in the resources, but we probably don't have time to go ahead and do that. But iMovie is another one. It used to not be a free app, but it is free now. So again, it's very similar to Premiere Clip. It's easy for the students to use and add those effects, and a combination of video and still images, and also they can add, the other feature is that they could be creating themes. They can be making movie trailers that are similar to movie trailers that you see in the movies. It's a feature that my students like to use. Unfortunately, when I retired, I didn't take all of my media from my school account, so I lost a few samples of work. But if you look up movie trailers for iMovie, I'm sure you'll find some ideas and inspiration there. And I just see that Jim has put that, put the link to the free Animoto educator upgrade in the chat. So I'm going to go grab that for the resource page. So another great app is called Stop Motion Studio. Really popular with the kids, I would say, from grades 3 and up. Not saying that students younger couldn't do this. We have done it with the older students, created stop motion videos. But another great way to tell narratives, to have the students. This is a situation where I probably would have them, and do have them, go through the whole process of gathering the media and making sure that they have all of their materials and creating a storyboard. This really is kind of a writing process app that I would say probably grade 3 and up, because it is a little bit more involved. And the app that we've used is called Stop Motion Studio. And let me just go and get the app for Stop Motion Studio. Sorry, if I'm just going to go grab that. And then I'll show you a little bit of the nuts and bolts of this one. So when you're using stop motion, the Stop Motion Studio, one thing that we find is really important, and we talk about it when we address it in the technical terms when we do a little bit of the critical response, is really keeping your iPhone or your iPad on a tripod or secure some way, or the camera secure, because what you want to happen is have the characters move in the video, but not having your camera move. So I've just put a couple of pictures of some really inexpensive tripods. One is a gorilla and the other one is called a spider. And they're both really light, they're cheap, they're really helpful, they're easy to transport. I think the gorilla one cost, I think I got them for $5 or $6, and the spider one was maybe $10. The spider one's great because you can wrap it around, thinking back to the time lapse, I put my phone on it and wrapped it around a pole in my classroom, and so it is a little bit more flexible. But the important thing is that you need to keep the camera still. If you don't keep the camera still, you get sort of a jumpy effect. So I'm going to show you a sample. This is probably one of the best that my students have ever done. We did, this was a grade 6. It was a literacy and then First Nations study, and so they were doing narratives, and they were doing folk and fairy tales and comparing traditional fairy tales with First Nations fables, and this is their rendition of one called Soot Face, which is an Ojibwe rendition of Cinderella. So we'll just watch a little bit of it so that you can kind of get the idea. So this was made on an iPad, and the students probably worked for about, I would say this would have been about a 3-week process. It was the writing and social studies integrated all in one. And then this is the results of their writing unit. And Beckett, I'll get that for you in just a second. I'm just going to put this this link in the chat so you can watch the video. We'll maybe only watch the first couple of minutes because, as I said, we are running out of time. And then I'll just put, so we'll maybe watch 2 minutes of them just so that you can see the detail that they did using the creating the sets, creating the characters, and also the skill that they needed to have in order to make the stop motion work. So we'll watch that. And Beckett, if you can clarify the link of the videos used for the live videos, I'm not sure what you mean by that. So I'll actually stop it because it goes on for about another minute. But you can see if you go back to those 60s as well, there's definitely creativity, there's collaboration, there's critical thinking. How are we going to make this work? There's community. The kids needed to really work together to make this video happen. And at the end of the day, we were able to cover off quite a few curriculum goals, and there was also a big assessment piece for literacy, social studies, and learning skills. So a great app. I would love to see some little ones try it. So and see what they can do. Not saying that it's not possible, but I found grade 3 really is a prime year to be starting something that is quite as sophisticated as this. So that's the stop motion app. So we're just going to move on to something called the critical response, which is really important in the production process. And I'll let Jim maybe explain that one as well. And I'll go and get the links.
Right. So once your students have gone through post-production and now they've created something, usually that's going to be, it's just like in writing, that's going to be the rough draft or the rough cut. And often what ends up happening, myself included, you create something and you've got the message, you've got your intended audience, and you've got the message that you want to get across to them, and you think it's really clear. And then when you go through this process, when, for example, they're doing the statements of meetings, and you now have a group of people, a group of students coming back to you to say, this is what I think that your video means, and you realize, wow, that's not the message that I was trying to get across, then you know what you might have to do to go back and make any changes. So we found that this is a really well laid out process that you can go through. And what we've also found really important is that you can't wait until your students have created something and then just lay this on top of them, because it's so difficult to do. Because what ends up happening is the kids just end up going, well, I like it, or I couldn't hear, or they aren't very sophisticated in their evaluations, both of their own work and or their peers' work. So what we found really useful is throughout the course of the year, right from the beginning of the year on, is to constantly be going through this process with other people's work, and we're going to show you some sites here in just a minute where you can find all sorts of media that's there, and you can go through this critical response process with other media, so that the more that they've done it with other media, the easier it is for them to do once they've created their own media. But it makes a huge difference in their final product. So once they've gone through this, then they can go back and they can re-edit their work and then it's ready for exhibition. So I'm not sure, Mally, did you want to actually go through where they're going to work on the critical response, or think just move ahead?
Yeah, I think because we still have the exhibition stuff to show as well, and a couple more apps. So right. What I've put in the chat box, and we'll also send in the resources, is are the 4 guiding questions that you can use with your students. And as Jim said, it's really a valuable experience to be doing this kind of process, especially on other people's media first. So having them practice doing it on media that they're not personally involved in, especially if they want to go and enter it into, like, publish it for exhibition or enter into a film festival. It's a great way to provide feedback to the students, and it's very focused. We've done this for years, and we find it's the pieces that are most engaging and interesting to watch are ones that have taken the time to use the critical response method before they do their final edit. So it really is a valuable experience. So, and just
before we sorry, Mally, just before you go on there, and is it something that you would do every single time? No, you know what I mean? Like, this is just something if your students are going to be exhibiting their work in some sort of way that you might want to go through this process. And just quickly, you can see with statement of meaning, that's the audience is asking the artist those questions. But then the second one, with the artist questions the peers, that's where the person who's created the work themselves is actually asking questions of their sort of small little audience, the test audience, I guess you call them. And then the last one for feedback and opinions, that's where you really want to have your students working on being very careful in how they word their opinions. So you can see here in the example, you know, you're basically asking, do you want to hear my opinion about the music that you've chosen, or would you like to hear some suggestions of some other music that I think might fit yours? Because what we end up finding happens, and I think if you go and create some of your own media, and we hope that you will, it can be really touchy, especially the more time that anybody's put into this. If people aren't sort of delicate and thoughtful in the way that they're being critical of each other, it can come off as being critical, and then people just get defensive and nothing good comes out of it. So again, it's something good to sort of be practicing throughout the year on other media before you start it with your own students. Sorry, Nellie, go ahead.
No, that's okay. So another great app is it's called Do Ink with green screen, and in our school board in Simcoe County, every librarian was provided, every teacher librarian was provided with a green screen and one of the tripods, and it's available in every one of our schools, which is fantastic. It's a great way for students to again use their creativity to create something really unique. And I'm just going to show you again an example of a green screen, or called chroma key. It's made with a program called Do Ink, and I'll share that link with you in a minute. This was actually a collaboration between a grade 4 and a grade 7 class, because grade 4s and grade 7s study one of their science units loosely line up looking at habitats and the effect of humans on habitat. So what I want you to look for is not necessarily the content, but just how the effects in the background change. So let me just go and get this link. I'm pretty sure it's this one. We'll just watch a little bit of it, just so that you can see how the background changed. So what a green screen does is essentially it takes out everything in the green that's in the green background when you're filming, and it allows you to put another background on. So yeah, every teacher got a green screen, which is fantastic. So let me just put that link here, and I'm pretty sure this is the one. Yes, it is. So you can see how the background is changing, and it's because they've filmed this on a chroma key. and use the app to sort of to activate the chroma key. So we'll stop that for now. So like people are saying, it doesn't always have to be green. What you need to do is just identify the color that you're going to be taking out of what you're filming. So when we were actually preparing to do this, so the kids realized pretty early on that they couldn't wear anything that was green. Our blonde kids had to be standing in a spot where their hair wasn't looking green, which can happen, because that would be taken out of the video. The chroma key would be taken out. Does it have to be chroma key? You know what? Jim would know that a little bit better than me. I just know how to use the program, but you can also do it with you can also do it with a video merge, where it's taking out one of the colors. You merge the videos. You merge the two things, the background and the foreground, and take out the colors. You're selecting the color to be taken out. And that's another thing that I was going to mention. When you're using any screen to take the color out, you need to make sure it's pretty tight. There aren't a lot of wrinkles, because the wrinkles create different shades of that same color. So when you're using the chroma key, it takes out that one color, and then you can be doing some adjustments to take out the colors that are similar. So we'll just go on to the next slide, and that's the app, the Do Ink. It needs lighting, and how am I doing it? Well, Barb, you know what? We realized early on when we were doing this with our students, because my kids did it quite a lot, and we were also working with other groups in the library. We had a little video club for a while. So we did go out and we purchased some lights. Lighting is really important because, again, you want to minimize the shadows. You don't want to have too much variation in the color, and it also really does make for a better video when you have good lighting, and we haven't even touched on good sound. But yeah, if you think back when we were talking about the stages of production, and when we were doing the shooting, we did have some lights. They're you can buy them fairly inexpensively online. And Jim's right, you don't have to have lights, but if you do have lights, it's great. Having it close to a window also works well. So there are just some tricks as you start working with these apps and producing some of these videos. You kind of you get some tricks and tips. You know where to put your camera. You know where to put your green screen. You could see in that little video that it was a little jumpy. That's because they didn't have a tripod. So we went and we did buy a tripod after that. This was before all of the schools got them, so we did go and buy a tripod. So they're just some little tips and tricks that we learned along the way. And as we said at the beginning, it is definitely a collaborative learning process. So we're always sharing that learning with others, and the kids are learning along with them as well. So with us as well, and they're problem solving. And when we do the critical response, that's when they said to one another, your video was a little bit jumpy, so what can we do the next time to improve it? And then we realized we needed a tripod so that the iPad wasn't moving along with the person who was filming. So those are all in the learning experiences. So that's the green screen. This is a really the Do Ink is a really simple way of using the green screen, and you can see the chroma filter. It's over here. Let's just go back. One of the choices when you are using the Do Ink, you can choose which color it will take out of the background. So if you are using those blue gym mats, you could be using the green, or the blue, it will take them out. If you're using a red sheet, it will take the red out. Just whatever works for you and what you have available. I was just in a school last week, and I thought this was absolutely brilliant. They took a can of paint and they painted a wall in one of their classrooms this sort of vibrant green, and that took away from all of those issues of having wrinkles and it not being smooth and it not being set up. They just move the furniture and then they do their filming. And yeah, it's a great app to explore. And definitely the kids it's one of these co-learning. If you go back to those C's, the co-learning things, then the kids can figure it out on their own. So VoiceThread, another fabulous app.
Yeah, now we've only got a few minutes. Now VoiceThread is now doing too. I think there is a charge for that because we got them all. Our board paid for it, but I can't remember what it is to buy. Maybe $5 for that one. And VoiceThread is another paid one, but you can create, I think, five or six of them for free, and that might be all you're going to need anyway. And what it does is essentially you can take either video or images, and students can upload it, and then they can just add a voice recording to it. And then the difference with this compared to some of the other ones is then it makes it really easy for other students to come in and add their voices, either, again, to comment on what the students have done, or just to add on to, maybe it's a poetry slam or whatever, and one student starts and the next student moves along with it. So there's lots of possibilities with it. I don't know, are we going to look at the example for this one, Ali, or just kind of move along? It's easier once you can see it. You'll see what the difference with this is. Now, the nice thing with VoiceThread and Animoto is you can get the app for an iPad, but it also works on computers, and you can work back and forth between the two.
And for some reason, it's not letting me put the link in the web tour. Is it coming? But it's in the chat, so you can just click on that for some reason. It was working yesterday. But it is in the chat if you want to click on that. It's not going. So if you'd like to see the sample, you'll need to click on the link in the chat box. I'm sorry, I don't know why that's not working.
That's okay. So maybe we'll just move on anyway, because it's something you can go back and have a look at later if you like. And it's one, one thing that I like about it is that the way we use it in our class is kids just create traditional little storybooks, just pencil and paper like they always have. They go ahead, they take pictures of their storybooks, and then they just record their voices to go with them. And then when they get to their last page, other kids will go and make comments about their stories, and I can do a little video comment at the end of it and that sort of thing. So it's nice and simple, kind of fun, been around for a while, but there is a charge if you start going over, using 5 or 6 of them. But you can get around that by, you can have 5 or 6, each kid can create their account, and then they can have 5 or 6, so on and so forth. Another cool one, and I think it's the last one we're going to look at today, is Toontastic. And it's something that we've just started playing with here. It's been around for a little bit, and it used to be, I think, $20, but now Google's bought it, so it's free. And it's just a really, really simple little cartoon app where students go in and they create nice little cartoons. There's all sorts of settings and characters that they can choose, or you can create your own setting by drawing it, or you can take a picture of a setting and use that, take a picture and use that as a setting. And then basically all you're going to do is they set it up. There's a nice little story arc that they have in it where it goes from setting to, I forget what they call it, but conflict, problem or something like that. And then there's a resolution or climax and then a resolution. And you can either follow that whole story arc or you can take out some of the sections. And to record the cartoon, basically you just hold it down, you move your little characters around the iPad and talk as you're doing it. So again, it's so easy, a 5-year-old can do it, and creates nice, simple little video, nice little cartoon. And are we just gonna, yeah. You can check out the examples later, and we'll just move on to exhibition and try and finish off with that because it is such an important phase of the whole process. Oops, sorry, Maddie, were you going to talk about My Hero?
Oh, sorry, I was talking to myself. So as Jim said, that exhibition is a really important part of the process, and having the students having the opportunity to share their work with others it creates a more meaningful experience for them. And there are lots and lots of opportunities to be sharing work, and some are local and some are global. But one of the global film sites, film festivals or places to exhibit work, is on the My Hero site. Not only is the My Hero site a great place to go and look for media, as we talked about, being able to view media and reflect and do the critical response on media that's created by others. They have a really rich library of youth-created media. So it's media that's created by youth, and it's all happy news stories, all about heroes. It's a great site to investigate, not just from a media perspective, but also from a literacy perspective or an art perspective. It's a very, very rich site. But every year they have an international film festival where students have the ability to share their work with others, and it be adjudicated by professional and amateur filmmakers, and also be not just the film festival, but they also have a gallery where the students can be sharing their work with a global audience. Another site that is a great place to be sharing some work is the Taking It Global Gallery, and the Global Gallery again is another site that is youth-created media. So within this site, they have students are able to submit videos and artwork in a global gallery, and they every 2 or 3 times a year they run a theme, and they challenge students, youth from 13 to 24. Not saying that it discounts anybody that's under 13, but the students that are under 13 can't participate in the contest part of it, but certainly are encouraged to submit their work to the global gallery. So they run contests 2 or 3 times a year on different themes. They just did one on climate change in my backyard. Now they have what does belonging look like, and so the children or the students create media based on that theme and submit it to the global gallery. Within the Taking It Global site, the kids are able to create a digital portfolio. There's the ability for students globally to provide feedback to the others, and it's another rich site where you can go and look, search for some media that you'd like to use for critical response. So just another great place to be sharing student media. So let me just go and get that link for the Taking It Global Gallery, the Global Gallery. So that's just another place to be sharing their media. And I'm just going to skip ahead. Jim already touched on our school board is having a local film festival. That's where the document came from Jacqueline Calder about the critical response. So I'll put that link in there. It's a film festival that's created by one of our consultants and they are actually using the What Does Belonging Look Like theme to encourage students to create media based on that theme. And what I love about this film festival is Jacqueline is encouraging the students to submit their work before the film festival date. And right now, the students are using the critical response method to be giving feedback to one another on their medium. And it really is an awesome idea. So I'll let Jim talk about other ways to exhibit student work, and I'll put that link in for the Simcoe County Film Festival for you to be looking at.
So obviously you can't always be submitting to film festivals, and we encourage you to join the networks, join a bunch of different networks, whether it's Taking It Global or Iron and those sorts of things, and then you're always made aware of when new festivals are coming up. But you want to find ways, basically you want to find a way to get your students' work beyond the four walls of your classroom. So, and there's lots of ways to do that. So for all those Adobe apps, and I always just download them to the camera roll on the iPad and then upload them to YouTube. And then once they're on YouTube, I can put it on a classroom blog. And if you don't have a classroom blog and you start getting involved in using all these different apps, eventually that's something that you're going to want to do, because then instead of sending parents to, to Animoto and to YouTube and to, to Adobe Slate and to all these different sites, they can just go to our classroom blog, and then all the media that we've created then ends up coming to our blog. And so it's kind of like one-stop shopping for the parents. If you're not comfortable with sharing it with the whole world quite yet, then you have a choice of, let's say, either in YouTube, you can create a channel, and then you can just make the channel private and just invite, I think, up to 50 people, and they're the only people who are going to be able to view it. Or you can use Vimeo, which is another video sharing site, and it's nice because you can easily set up make your videos private, and you just get a password, or you can generate a password that you can give to parents or others that you want to be able to view the work. Or you could upload your work to Google Drive, and then from Google Drive you can share it, either make it public and just share the link, or you can just share it with certain people. You have all sorts of different ways that you can share it. I also put Facebook and Twitter in there. I'm not a huge user of each one of those in my own personal life, but as far as my kids love to get their stories out there. So even as we were sitting here, so we uploaded a story today, so it goes to our classroom blog, then it automatically goes to Facebook and our class Facebook and Twitter accounts. And then the nice thing is, parents see it there, and they share it with their friends, and my kids will come in tomorrow, and they'll have all these comments from people all over the place who are commenting on their work. So again, what you want to do is you just want to make sure that what you're comfortable in sharing, and what your school board's policies are in terms of what you're allowed to share, and in terms of student work and that sort of thing. But definitely get it out there. And then finally, I guess we just have a couple of great resources. So Adobe Youth Voices has all sorts of resources. Mally's going to either put it up in the chat box here, or she's going to send you, later on, she's going to send you all the links that she's put up here, nicely organized, so that you can see the different apps, the tutorials, and resources that are available for you that we've talked about today. But Adobe Youth Voices is a great site to go to, both to find media, to find media that other students have created, and all sorts of resources in terms of, for example, how to get better sound, how to get better lighting, how to do green screen, that sort of stuff. So there's lots of great how-to tutorials in there. And then on the right-hand side, Mally already mentioned the My Hero International Film Festival. They also have a great educator component to the My Hero website, and part of that, there's a whole media arts education section within there that will take you all the way through it, take you through all the stages that we've just talked about. Oh, and thanks, Barb, for putting up the film festival that you guys are going to be running. And these are just some of the sites that you can go to if you're looking for media. So VideoBlocks is a paid site, but Mally turned me on. It's great for finding just backgrounds, like moving backgrounds. So if again, when they're doing the climate change thing and you're looking for that climate change sort of background, or sharks swimming by in the background, it's a paid site, but you can join, and then you can download, I forget what it is, like you have 4 or 5 days or whatever to download whatever you can. You can download so many a day. So I just went in, Mally went in, we joined, and then we just got a whole whack of backgrounds that we could use that are more than enough to get you through the year. So then you can see there's some other resources there for music and still images.
Yeah, and Photos for Class is a free site. Sorry, I didn't have my mic on before, but Photos for Class is a site that has a lot of free images that actually go along with the Ontario curriculum. They've got like farm sets and urban and rural, and and lots of habitats. So if you're doing things like Adobe Voice or even green screen, you can go in and get some free images there. And our contact information, if you have any other questions, I'll put those in the chat as well, and it will be in the resources. Feel free to contact us. As we said, there are iEarn accounts, so just feel free to contact us about film festivals or any of the apps, and we're more than happy to help you out. So just a couple of housekeeping things before we go, and thanks everyone for spending an hour and a half with us. It was great. We're never sure if we have enough content, but we actually had way too much. So if at the end of the webinar, if you can please fill out the feedback survey. It serves really three purposes. One of them is to provide OTF with some feedback about the sessions, and also they'll send it to us. And most importantly, they share the data with the Ministry of Education about how you feel about OTF Connects and how it's providing professional development for you. And if you find it effective, they do read the feedback in order to determine the funding for next year. So there are three ways that you can do that. You can click, this is a hyperlink that will take you right to the survey, or when you log out, it will take you directly to the feedback survey, and I'll put the link in the chat as well. The other thing is that when you complete the survey, you will be sent a link where you will you'll have a certificate of participation for your professional portfolio. So we have OTF Connects goes to the end of May. It doesn't run in June, but there are lots of sessions pretty much every night, Monday to Thursday, from now until the end of May. So if you want to go to the OTF Connects website and register for some more sessions, there are lots of them. And also you can visit their site to look at some of the archived webinars. And as I said, the one on copyright and Creative Commons that Jacqueline Calder did is archived there. So thanks for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it, and we hope to see you again.